Can you, and most importantly, should you learn Japanese using and watching anime? Hello noble ones and welcome to Metatron's Academy, the channel where we explore how to learn languages in the most fun and effective way possible. I think those among you who watch this channel mostly for the Japanese related content, because you're actually learners, active learners of Japanese, will have come to this sort of question, with channels out there trying to push anime as a great way to learn Japanese and other channels telling you, oh no, absolutely stay away, it can mess up your Japanese. So what we are really asking here is anime a good teaching tool, or is it actually counterproductive to use this as you're trying to learn and master Japanese? The answer to this question is actually quite nuanced, and I'll try to cover all the different subsections that we need to cover in order to give an exhaustive answer. First and foremost, I'd like to say that anime can absolutely be used as a good resource to help learn and improve your Japanese. With that being said, there isn't really a right or wrong answer, and it's not that black and white. There are pros and there are cons that come with using anime and utilizing anime to help with your Japanese. So let's explore those. Now, whenever you're trying to reach fluency in a language, you want to make sure that you sound in a very natural way. So the first question we should ask is the sort of dialogue that we find in anime in any way, shape or form representative of the way Japanese actually speak in a day-to-day life? And the answer to this is, well, it depends. The huge array and enormous variety that you have within the world of anime really makes answering this question impossible. So the first suggestion I would give you is be very selective and be careful what anime you choose to use for your learning. One of the pros of using anime as a learning method is the fact that you get to do a ton of listening, and listening is probably one of the hardest skills that you need to develop when it comes to learning a language. And the reason why listening, or the ability to understand speakers who speak a language at a natural speed, can be a monumental task or goal to achieve is because of something called speech tempo. The speech tempo, or more precisely in this case the articulation rate, is the number of syllables used by native speakers as they speak naturally a language. And even though there are some exceptions to what I'm about to say, generally speaking, one of the characteristics that all native speakers have of all languages is that they tend to speak their own language rapidly. Now, of course, this speech tempo can vary not only between speakers but also within the speech of one speaker, depending on or according to contextual and emotional factors. But in general, native speakers speak very fast, and that can make it really difficult, particularly for beginners, to be able to understand them. Now, anime comes in because it gives you the ability to do a lot of listening that is fun. Like, literally compare the average episode of an anime and how much fun you can have if you are into that to the usual listening exercises that you do when you're trying to prepare for an A2 or B1 international exam, the latter being as fun as watching the grass grow. Now, with that being said, how do we address this problems that some people present with the idea that, yeah, but people don't really speak like anime characters, so if you speak like an anime character, you'll sound weird? Well, this can absolutely happen, and it is one of the cons that we are going to talk about today. But that really isn't limited to anime characters alone. If you are critical about the movie dialogues of the films that you watch, even in English, you'll notice that in the majority of cases, one of the characteristics of movies, and then that's sort of ported into animation too, is contrast within dialogue. In other words, if you really pay attention, people in TV series, drama, movies, and animation rarely agree when there is a conversation. Now, that is specifically a technique used by writers to make everything more interesting. If everybody just agreed and everyone was like nodding and be like, oh yeah, for the entirety of the 2 hours movie that you're watching, people will get really bored. But contrast, conflict tend to appear a lot. In animation, this tends to be more accentuated simply because we have a sort of a greater suspension of disbelief, in the sense that these are animated characters. So whether it's an anime set in a sci-fi setting, or whether it's an anime set in the world of yokai, or whether it's an anime that is set in our present day world, still the characters can get away with sentences, dialogue, lines, and sometimes even patterns of speech that would be a little weird and awkward if the character wasn't animated. And one proof of this is that sometimes in live action movies, when a lot of the times these look a little cringy, if not corny, simply because they are literally taking dialogue from the anime and have real actors repeat it, which make them sound a little weird. But of course, as I was saying, this is kind of a characteristic of movie and theater in general. This kind of connects to my first point, because it really depends on what anime you choose to watch. And there will be anime where the majority of conversation are actually pretty realistic, and then there will be anime where a character is speaking in a way that is either archaic, because they want him to sound like someone who has been on the planet for over 2,000 years, or completely made up. For example, there is one characteristic about Naruto, and the way he speaks, he tends to add this syllable at the end of everything he says, which is tebayo, which, to be honest, I've never heard anyone use. But apart from these cases, a lot of anime are actually fine to learn conversation. So as long as you choose an anime which has a setting which is in the present day, then you should be okay when it comes to how real is this Japanese that these people are using, how natural is it. But another problem that we may encounter when we're learning through anime is that of register. Now, all languages have several types of register. You can speak in an informal way, casual way, neutral way, intimate way, and this is just a few. Now take this and multiply it by 16, because Japanese has so many registers, is mind-blowing. So here is a trick for you. When you're watching an anime and you see a character, you generally speaking understand what they're saying. Maybe you're reading subtitles, we'll get back to the subtitles in a second, and you see, okay, this character is asked whether his interlocutor likes the food they're having or not. And you might think, oh, that's great, I'm gonna memorize that sentence and then I'm gonna use it with my, I don't know, Japanese friend, or whenever I see a Japanese person who's eating at a restaurant, because my area is very touristy, I'm gonna ask them if they like their food. That's a nice thing to ask, isn't it? Well, it is a nice thing to ask, but it depends how you ask it, which is why you need to look at context clues a lot when you're watching anime and learning sentences. Think about it this way. In English, there is a huge difference between saying, hey bro, do you like your food? And saying, good morning, sir. Is the food to your satisfaction? The language is still the same, but the casual versus formal register already make these two inquiries, which at the end of the day are asking the same thing, completely different. Now, of course, if you use the first one with your best friend and the latter with your boss, who also happens to be part of the upper class, I guess, then it's fine. But what happens if you reverse them? What happens if you go to your boss and say, hey bro, do you like your food? Well, depending on how intimate you are with your boss, you might get away with it or get fired. And at the same time, if you use the super formal one with your best friend, they're probably gonna laugh because they're gonna think you're joking. But if you use the super formal one with a newborn baby, 2-year-old, it's gonna sound really weird. So whenever you learn something from a character, make sure you understand who the character is speaking with, because Japanese, it's such a specific language that if the character is a ninja, chances are he sounds like a ninja. If the character is a samurai, chances are he speaks like a samurai. If the character is a girl who was brought up in a posh family, then guess what? She sounds just like that. And if the character is an old man, then he will speak like an old man. And in Japanese, all of this is grouped together with one word, yakuwarigo. Yakuwarigo tends to represent the sort of speech characteristics that are linked to a specific role within cinema, animation, drama, what have you. And these are very established patterns. To give you an example, if you're watching Bleach, do not talk like Ichigo, because he's so rude and has this sort of street kid type of punk way of speaking. Oi, nani shiagaru? Nani ittenda yo? Yabe. I mean, don't get me wrong, if you're hanging out with a group of 15-year-olds in a gang in Japan, then be my guest. But if you're speaking to a poor tourist who's just enjoying his food and you tell them, suge, nani ittenda yo? Then yeah, they're gonna think you're weird, they're gonna think you're extremely rude, they might even get offense, or maybe they might laugh, sort of depends. So my suggestion is absolutely use anime as a form of learning. Great for listening, you can learn a lot of vocabulary, but make sure you first have an overall understanding of how registers work in Japanese. So I would say only learn the sentences when you know the context and you understand the grammar behind it. Don't just learn them if you don't know any other Japanese, because then you might end up saying things that are rather awkward. Another thing that is interesting to say about anime is the range of vocabulary. Some people might ask, but is anime vocabulary childish? Am I going to sound like a child? And the answer to that is absolutely not. Then again, it kind of depends on who the character is and what anime you're watching. But in general, the range of vocabulary within anime varies monumentally. And if you watch something like Ghost in the Shell, you memorize those kind of sentences and you learn to speak like a character from Ghost in the Shell. You'll sound like an amazing scientist. In fact, that anime is so difficult to understand that even for me, I have to stop it sometimes and look up words, even though I've been learning Japanese for a decade. An anime that I found pretty nice when it came to the Japanese was Kimi no Na wa. The structure, the way they were speaking was quite natural, so that was a nice anime. And also like Love Hina is another cute one. Instead, if you look at anime created by Miyazaki Hayao, sometimes some characters, so it kind of depends on the character, but some characters speak in a bit of a more beautiful but a little archaic way. So you also need to be careful which character you're trying to mimic. And in a way, this connects to the next point. Oftentimes, I think what happens, and this is something I notice happening with my students who were a little bit on the younger side, is that they will see a character that they like, really like this guy, he's so cool. So I want to sound cool because to me he sounds really cool, so I want to sound like him. And as I was saying, this can be dangerous depending on what character you choose and also in which context you are choosing to sort of mimic and try to speak the same way that that character speaks. And this is why you need to be very careful to the next point. Subtitles consistency. So subtitles oftentimes, unfortunately, are not only not enough to fully appreciate and comprehend what you're really saying, but other times they are completely outright wrong. So if you are learning Japanese in the sense that you see that the subtitle is saying, "Wait please," and you're just repeating the sentence that you're hearing, well, oftentimes when it's a very short sentence, that already can be a problem because, as I say, what register are they using? Are they saying, "Chotto matte kudasai"? Are they saying, "Matte kure"? Are they saying, "Mate yo"? Are they saying, "Chotto matte ne, omachi kudasai"? Ah, omachi kudasai. I mean, I can go on. There are so many different ways to say wait or wait please. And all of these are so many different levels of and registers that you really need to know which one it is. And of course, subtitles tend to not tell you, which is one of the reasons why learning with an anime is a complementary tool. It can be great, but you need to do it together with other things. Books that explain to you the grammar and make you more comfortable with a grammar structure that you are seeing being used in an anime. And also possibly with interaction with natives and many other things that I will tell you as we speak more about how to systematically learn a language such as Japanese in future videos. A positive thing about anime is that oftentimes, of course, people that are dubbing these anime in Japan are professional voice actors. And in the majority of cases, this means that they will speak with a accent-free standard Hyojungo, which generally speaking translates as Tokyo accent. They will pronounce all of their words and sentences with the Tokyo pitch accent or standard pitch accent. I'll tell you more about it on a dedicated video. But also they tend to enunciate more, which helps you because unfortunately a lot of natives, when they speak, they don't enunciate, in fact they mumble, but generally in anime that doesn't happen much. Last but not least, you should use anime as a side tool only if you really enjoy anime. If you really like it, then that's a great pro, because it allows you to put a lot of hours into listening and learning vocabulary, maybe writing and taking notes, because you're passionate about it, you like it, you love it. And that's great, and you can use that to your advantage. But if you're really not into anime, you don't have to watch it. There are many other sources and resources out there online that you can use to learn Japanese without having to deal with anime. If you're not interested, if you find them boring, don't use it. Last question, did I use anime to reach fluency in Japanese and to study Japanese? Okay, so when I was in my early 20s and late, of course, in my teenage years, I was very much into anime, but I would watch them in Italian. And then as I started learning Japanese in my early 20s, yes, I used to watch a lot of anime. I liked it. It was a great way for me to practice. Of course, as I say, I didn't just entirely focus on anime. I don't truly believe that you can reach fluency in Japanese with anime only. You need to use a whole variety of methods. You do need some book learning, and most importantly, you need to speak with natives. Possibly even move to Japan. You can reach fluency without moving to Japan, but it's much harder. But I did watch a lot of anime and I did use it as a learning tool. But also remember that I was at the time formally studying at university and it was my major. So I was taking a lot of classes at the same time. Ultimately, when I moved to Japan, I remember that I started watching anime not necessarily for learning because I was in Japan, so that's the best thing to do, to go out there, make friends, speak Japanese. But I was using anime simply because now I had in a way reached my dream as a teenager, in the sense that now I could understand anime and really connect with the characters, and not only understand what they were saying, but why they were saying it that way and how they were saying it. And that really made me happy. And I was still, picking up the occasional word that I didn't know, or expression or new verb that I could then try and use with my colleagues at work or with my friends. And right now, I don't really watch anime anymore. I do very rarely, very occasionally. It's not that I don't like anime, it's just that I think I've watched a bit too much when I was in my 20s, so now I'm not particularly interested in anime. I occasionally watch it, sometimes I even watch it with my wife, but in the majority of cases now I don't use it much as a way to keep up my Japanese. I prefer actually playing video games in Japanese, watch movies in Japanese, and I'm not really into Japanese drama, but I do like watching Japanese movies and films. Alright, but I hope that this was useful. If you have questions about learning Japanese and how to use anime, and you want to know something that perhaps I haven't addressed on this video, let me know in the comments, and make sure to join Metatron's Academy. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Saraba.